So, Shat listeners, in addition to being able to commission films, we will send Raj to play with your children for $100 an hour.
Fuck yeah.
Unsupervised.
What I'm saying is I have experience. I have references.
Yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roeper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Carrie, Alabama Gross.
You don't put a condom on unless you're going to fuck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah.
You're so strange. You're
What, me?
You're
I'm
the
strange?
strangest. You're the strangest person I know.
Why? That.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Exactly. Don't play innocent.
I feel like we need to balance that off with the Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation.
No, keep going.
Come on, just do it one time for me. Come on, we're recording
not a
two
monkey.
podcasts back to back. I just
I'm not
want
a monkey.
give us a little Arnold. Our fans love it.
No.
You're gonna make me work for it, aren't you?
Go ahead, kill me. I'm right here. Kill me.
And each week we take a look back at time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week the audience selects from 6 movie choices, or occasionally commissions a podcast. And then we break out our race car VHS tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes at the end of each podcast. The three of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and True Detective with Gene Lyons, the King Bee, and Big D. That being said, Big D, what are we doing on Shat the Movies this episode?
Yeah, we're going to float the buoy and we're going to make this podcast go stealthy. So we're going to go 0 bubble down 5 degrees, and we're going to do a movie that was commissioned by Rod.
I was going to say, and that concludes this Shat the Movies podcast.
0
Be
wipes.
sure to follow
All right.
us on Twitter. And good night.
Rod would be like, what the hell? I got a 10-minute podcast. How did that work? Yeah. So Rod H., one of our listeners, wrote in. So Carrie, why don't you tell us what Rod said?
Dear Shat the Movies, I think you guys have a stellar show that is one of my favorite podcasts. I've been a lifelong film fan. Some kids were into sports. I was into movies. For me, it was an escape. Growing up, sometimes people made me feel like it was an odd hobby to be into. Unlike today, there are multiple social groups, podcasts, conventions, and so on dedicated to the film industry that they didn't have that kind of access back when I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Frequently, I'd go to these films by myself. Don't feel sorry for me. I actually prefer going alone most of the time. Me too. And anytime there was something being filmed in my city, I'd jump on the chance to watch. The Poltergeist house was about 6 to 7 blocks from where I lived. Sadly, my parents never told me about it at the time. I've met Lauren Hutton while she filmed a made-for-TV movie, and I worked construction at Guillermo del Toro's house, actually met and talked with him, which was the highlight for me. Super nice guy. The film I'd love to commission is Crimson Tide. Other than being a kick-ass movie, I don't have any special connection to it. Cool, thanks, dude.
Nice.
I love it because it's such a tense film that I feel benefits from excellent performances from Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, with a script that was punched up by Tarantino and superbly directed by Tony Scott. Well, at least that's my take. I give it 0 wipes. This is a birthday gift to myself. Thanks again, Rod. Happy birthday, Rod.
Yeah, Rod, I want to thank you. I don't think you're strange. I enjoy movies alone as well. I will only go to a movie if it's during the week, during an hour that there's less than like 20 people in the theater.
You're such a curmudgeon.
I am.
We
I
should have
can't-
brought this up on the Back to the Future 2 cast, because we were like, oh, how could Leah Thompson act like she's like, Marty? And she's all, and meanwhile, she's 40 years old. That's you.
I like a quiet time without cell phones. So I agree. Movies alone sometimes are the best. I don't feel like an oddball.
You need to drive to Ocala and start watching movies with our buddy Dana Buckler. I feel like you guys have the very similar movie watching habits. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'll feel this way when I turn 40.
In what, 6 months?
Listen, it doesn't matter how long that it is. What I'm saying is I still enjoy being around people occasionally, and movie going is a fun experience for me, especially if there's other people, because then I can laugh, I can cry, I can share in that emotional moment with other people.
You can laugh so hard you start choking in the front row of Labyrinth.
That's right. Crimson Tide is a 1995 American submarine film directed by Tony Scott and produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. It takes place during a period of political turmoil in the Russian Federation in which ultra-nationalists threaten to launch nuclear missiles at the United States and Japan. It focuses on a clash of wills between new executive officer Denzel Washington of a U.S. nuclear missile submarine and its seasoned commanding officer, played by Gene Hackman, arising from conflicting interpretations of an order to launch their missiles. The story parallels a real incident during the Cuban Missile Crisis, albeit aboard a Soviet rather than U.S. submarine. Crimson Tide earned $18.6 million in the United States on its opening weekend, which ranked number one for all films released that week. Overall, it earned $91 million in the U.S. and an additional $66 million internationally, for a total of $157.3 million. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Times is quoted as writing, "This is the rare kind of war movie that not only thrills people while they're watching it, but invites them to leave the theater actually discussing the issues." And he ultimately gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4. That being said, Big D, what is the first thing you think of when you hear the movie Crimson Tide?
Well, I remember it was a submarine movie, and I like sub movies. But I always thought Hunt for Red October was, the pinnacle of 80s and 90s sub warfare. I don't remember where I was when this movie came out or why I didn't see it. I always remembered that Crimson Tide was good, but it wasn't up there with Hunt for Red October. Now, as I've gotten older and going back and watching it post-military service, I have a different appreciation for it. And now I think my memories of those two movies might flip.
So you originally watched this movie before you joined the Army?
Yes.
And then you haven't watched it since?
Correct.
Got it. Yeah, I'm like, unlike you, I didn't join the service, but we have talked about this on previous podcasts. Gene always makes the comparison that in childhood, there were adult movies, and then there were movies that were aimed at the demographic that we were in. This, to me, was an adult movie, even though it was 96, and I'm pretty sure I was like a junior in high school. No, this was 95, so I was a sophomore in high school. But my stepfather liked Tom Clancy film adaptations. Like, he didn't read Tom Clancy, but I think he maybe listened to it on audiobooks. But he would always drag us to the movie theaters or make it a blockbuster night where we watched it as a family. We also had the Submarine model on display located on the adventure floor at Planet Hollywood Orlando. And so if you can imagine, this is how awkward Planet Hollywood was in the 2000s, is that they didn't they went through some pretty bad times and some bankruptcy. Like, it's better now since they've remodeled. But like, I worked at during that weird stage where the props were severely outdated, or they were like ones that people were like, ugh, Crimson Tide. Like, do you know how hard it is to sell an LA lasagna to a family of 6 when they're like, oh, we're next to Crimson Tide submarine?
He's right. I got to tell you, though, that lasagna is tasty.
It's fried cheese and bread with
I'm gonna imagine if you had a lasagna and then rolled it up like a giant egg roll and deep fried it. It'll take years off your life, but it is tasty.
I think it has like 6,000 calories. Like, it's something atrocious. Carrie, have you ever seen this movie?
Much like the deep fried egg roll lasagna, I've never heard of this movie.
You haven't lived.
I had no idea it was going to be a military movie. And so I sat down with my chamomile tea and my 3 cats and snuggled up for what I thought was going to be like a dramatic mystery movie. Boy, was I mistaken. Let me read some of the notes that I've taken that aren't relevant to any of the plots. But let me just preface that this is my thinking through this movie. What is martial law?
Mm-hmm.
What is Death Con? Who is Silver Surfer?
Right.
How do missiles work? Who is fun? von Clausewitz, what the fuck is an authenticator?
Oh my God.
I don't think a single movie has ever made me feel so fucking stupid.
Wow.
I need to take
That's what Tom Clancy's
I need to
movies
take a
do.
fucking history class or read a book after this movie.
Oh.
As soon as the first scene where the newscaster is like, breaking news, blah, 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 I'm like, I think I should be paying attention right now.
Yeah.
I think I
right.
need to be taking some serious fucking notes.
It's jarring when they bring in like real footage. You're like, oh, there's Bill Clinton and CNN and there's breaking news.
Yeah, it felt like one of those movies that you watched in high school that you were going to have a quiz after. I was like, oh God, I got to fucking pay. What is going on here?
Carrie, you are so cute. I love you so much. Reading these notes, I can just picture you alone with your cats. Hold on. DeathCon? It's DEFCON.
Yeah, it's
not
DEFCON.
DeathCon.
Yeah.
What is it though, honestly? Because people make the reference in the hospital. We're like, this is DEFCON 3. I'm like, what?
It's like defense readiness condition, something along those lines. But I picture her like, isn't that the thing in San Diego that everybody goes to and dresses up?
Yeah, DEFCON.
And when we get plot by plot point, I'm going to ask, like, how do missiles work?
Yeah, we'll break it all down for you.
Here we go. Well, with that being said, Big D, play the trailer.
As you no doubt heard, my XO has appendicitis. Your name was at the top of the list.
That's good to know, sir.
It was a short list.
There's trouble in Russia. So they called us. And we're going over there and bringing the most lethal killing machine ever devised.
The last time we hit this state of emergency was 32 and a half years ago during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So this is what it's all about, gentlemen. It's what we train for.
Submerge the ship.
Diving officer, submerge the ship, make a depth 150 feet.
On the 1MC, dive.
This year,
we have a properly formatted emergency action message from National Command Authority.
what we've always known
Bravo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha.
becomes what we've always feared.
Gentlemen, this is the captain. Russian rebels have threatened to launch against our country and are fueling right now. This is not a drill.
Now,
Sir, we have a possibly submerged submarine.
You find out who that is.
Receiving emergency action message. Recommend alert 1.
the battle for survival begins.
That's a message fragment.
Sir, we don't know what this message means. Our target package could have changed.
I've made a decision.
There's no place for fear.
He's lost his nerve.
I'd rather go out myself and get this one wrong.
There's no room for mistakes.
If we launch and we're wrong, what's left of Russia is going to launch at us.
I'm captain of this boat. I don't have to think this over.
There's no time for doubt.
Missile system's ready to launch in 6 minutes.
You repeat this order or I'll find somebody who will.
Hell no, you won't, sir.
And nothing can stop the tide.
Torpedoes in the water. Right forward.
1,000 yards of closing dive. Make your depth 1,200 feet.
We cannot launch our missiles unless both you and I agree.
They're fueling their missiles.
He's right on top of us.
Please, Commando. Under arrest. Under charge of mutiny. Launch your ready.
Lock Captain Ramsey in his stateroom.
Fire one. Now. Give me the missile key, Mr. Hunter.
Sir, we are going down.
I'm the commander of this ship.
Crimson Tide.
God help you if you're wrong.
If I'm wrong, then we're at war. God help us all.
In post-Soviet Russia, civil war erupts as the result of an ongoing conflict in Chechnya. Military units loyal to Vladimir Radchenko, a Russian ultranationalist, take control of a nuclear missile installation and are threatening nuclear war if either the American or Russian governments attempt to confront him. A U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, the USS Alabama, is assigned to a patrol mission to be available to launch its missiles in a preemptive strike if Radchenko attempts to fuel his missiles. Captain Frank Ramsey chooses as his new XO Lieutenant Commander Ron Hunter, who has extensive education in military history and tactics, but no real combat experience.
So, Carrie, you weren't around when we did Top Gun, but this was also directed by Tony Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And for that movie, the Navy really helped him. The Navy was great. They let him film on the ships. They let him have behind-the-scenes access. So he thought, man, I've already got the connection. Whew, Crimson Tide's going to be easy. I'm going to be able to get all this done, get some great shots. I'm fucking in. Hell no. The second the Navy saw the script and that it had a mutiny on a U.S. nuclear submarine, they said, no, there is no way we're letting you film on the ship. We're not being any part of this. So the way he got around it, they paid local fishermen in Pearl Harbor to tip them off when the U.S. submarines were leaving. And they had speedboats and helicopters ready. So that scene where the Alabama is pulling out and it starts to submerge and, you know, it's sunset, that was like pirate footage. That was like Tony Scott and them on boats. Like, come on, follow it, get out there. The Navy was pissed off, but he said, you know, it's completely legal. You're in open waters. But sheer coincidence, the ship that was leaving, the sub that they got footage of, actually turned out to be the USS Alabama.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How many Alabama football fans do you think were confused, though, when they showed up in theaters for this movie?
If Carrie knew what the football team's nickname was, I think she would have believed this was like a Remember the Titans.
Right. I think people thought that this was going to be a football, but like I had no idea. So is the submarine nickname is the Crimson Tide because it's the USS Alabama? Is that the situation?
No, it's just the USS Alabama. So then I have that, you know, that chant that they yell, "Go Bama, go! Roll Tide, roll!" You know, it's just like the fine people of that fine state within that great country. You know, like the captain recites. It's just the USS Alabama. It could have been any submarine, but this one has a jazzy title.
Big D is a Crimson Tide fan because he likes winners. And also it's an homage to my father, my late father. Mm-hmm. So in fact, for Christmas, I gave Big D, I guess what could be described as a Crimson Tide fan pack. I got him a Crimson Tide shirt, like the old school logo, which I think looks really cool. And then also my dad had on his truck a Crimson Tide, an Alabama license plate. And I thought there's no better person to give this to, because I'm certainly not going to, you know, I'm a Gator, but I know Big D will love and treasure it. And so I gave him that, though. And you also have the Crimson Tide mug that you use at your office every day.
Yes, just so people know, prior to your father's passing, I had never watched an entire college football game and known any of the players. My school was Division I, but I could care less. But your father, when he passed, and we were over his house cleaning out, and the spirit of Ronnie, you know, came down and touched me on the shoulder and said, you know, we've lost one Tide fan. You will become the Tide fan. So I watched almost every Tide game since then. And I've actually become a fan. I could tell you who the final teams were in the bowl championship series. So your father in passing, at least it lives on through me.
It warms my heart, because literally I would have packed those away, but it like he had like a Crimson Tide poster that was framed on his wall in his office. And I'm like, I'm never going to put this up, you know, so I'd rather you have it. And I'm glad that but we talk about, like, you know, Family Man and my father and all that. In the introduction, in the first part of this movie, they're introducing the character of Denzel Washington, which is Ron Hunter. But from now on, for the rest of the podcast, we're never going to address him as Ron Hunter. He is forever known as Denzel Washington. There's no delineation. They try to introduce him as like this family man, you know, trying to balance being an XO lieutenant in the Navy and this family life. But he's depicted as having, like, I guess, throwing one of his kids a birthday party. And in the birthday party, do you guys find this creepy? They hire a magician. Like, is it creepier to hire a magician for your 8-year-old's birthday party or a clown? Like, what would be creepier? Big D, you have a daughter. You have Emma. Like, when you start getting into group birthday parties, which she's almost at the age at, what would you rather hire? A kid magician or a kid clown?
Neither. I would hire neither of these. But I honestly thought, I said, wow, I wonder if Roger wanted to be a magician growing up. Because besides a DJ, that was you. I could picture you being like, you know what? I could manage other clowns and magicians, and I could DJ some parties. This could be like an entertainment empire of birthday parties.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I actually did do.
Of course you did.
Of course you did.
When I was the mascot for the University of Florida, I was Albert the alligator. I would do side gigs. And this is all on the up and up. It's not like I was like on the side, you know, in the background of porno films as Albert the alligator, and everything had to be approved by the University Athletic Association. So they would contact the UAA and they were like, hey, we would love to have Albert at our wedding or a special event or something like this. So I was hired for a kid's birthday party. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to roll in and it's going to be like the scene depicted here in Crimson Tide, where there's a lot of kids and parents and everything like that. I get there and they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, come on in. And I'm like, where are the other kids? And they're like, no, we had his birthday party last weekend. He just wants to hang out with Albert now. That was like what he wanted for his birthday. And I'm like,
that's weird.
It's a little weird.
That's a lot.
It's weird. A little strange. And so they're like, well, do you want to go get changed? And I'm like, I guess. So I go back into the room. I put on the suit. I meet the kid. And then we just go in the backyard and we like play. I kid you not. I'm a college kid. I think this is my sophomore or junior year. And I'm just in the backyard. The parents have left me. Like, I'm unsupervised. Hanging out with this kid. He's showing me his like treehouse and like we're playing games and whatnot. I'm sure I'm being looked at out the window. But like looking back on it, I played with that kid in the backyard for like 45 minutes.
What did that cost the parents?
I think they gave me like $100.
What?
It didn't cost anything.
How does it not cost the school like $4,000 or $5,000? At
the time, they didn't care about making money. They were just like, well, this is something cool. Like, do you want to do it, Roger? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. But then I had to go hang out with this fucking kid in his backyard for 45 minutes, being the most uncomfortable I've ever had. That's the closest I could say to being a child magician or a clown.
So, Shat listeners, in addition to being able to commission films, we will send Raj to play with your children for $100 an hour.
Okay.
Unsupervised.
What I'm saying is I have experience. I have references.
Yeah.
Does anyone else, though, as I was watching this, is anyone else in the state of our current political climate worried that at any moment, like a nuclear holocaust could happen, North Korea or Russia, or maybe the United States could make nuclear threats on somebody and we're all just in limbo waiting for things to be buttons to be pushed?
I'm not so much worried about nuclear holocaust. I'm more worried about like biological or chemical weapons, something that's that simple. Full nuclear holocaust.
Really?
Yes, definitely, without a doubt. It doesn't take that much for someone to distribute sarin or ricin or a lot of these chemical or biological agents.
No, for that, I feel like we've got safeguards in place. Like we live in such a nanny state now that like we know when people are buying these type of supplies.
What?
However, I'm more afraid. I'm like Carrie. When this wasn't that long ago, was it a year and a half ago? Was it maybe 2 years ago? Where everyone in America got that alert that a missile was launched towards Hawaii and for people to evacuate?
It was like a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a year ago. And then recently, our political administration has pulled out of like the Reagan era agreement with the Soviet Union to reduce its nuclear arms. We've backed out of that. I am more concerned about nuclear war than I've ever been in my entire life.
So in your average day, do you think about nuclear war? How many times?
Yes, I do. I do drills just like I did in elementary school growing up in the 80s, where every day around lunchtime, a bell goes off in my home office and I crawl up under my desk with Albie and Pippa because that's the way that I was taught you can survive a nuclear blast. It's just by hiding under your desk.
I think we're more likely to have irreparable damage from carbon emissions and climate change than nuclear war at this point.
That'll happen over a long time, though. That'll happen over a long time. Well, during their initial days at sea, tension between Ramsey and Hunter, Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington, becomes apparent due to a clash of personalities. Denzel Washington's more analytical, cautious approach as opposed to Gene Hackman's more impulsive and intuitive approach. The Alabama receives an emergency action message, or an EAM, ordering the launch of 10 of its missiles against the Russian nuclear installation based on satellite information that the Russians' missiles are being fueled. Before Alabama can launch its missiles, a second radio message begins to be received, but is cut off by the attack of a Russian Akula-class submarine loyal to Radchenko.
So we know that the Navy wasn't happy about this movie because the plot had a mutiny in it. I'm sure they would have been equally pissed off at the amount of fat sailors. I couldn't believe it. They're even making fat jokes. You have James Gandolfini asking if the other fat sailor, Lawson, is going to fit in the sub. Then you got the fat head cook who dies because of his 300 pounds, not because of the fire. I was like, this can't be real. Now, granted, in the Army, we joke about the Navy and the Air Force, about them not being real, soldiers, because they're not that physically active. But I went and Googled it and looked it up, and I found that there was a 1987 report that discovered 10% of submariners failed their fitness requirements. So, the only way to really exercise in the sub was to run around the missiles. But this is accurate, I guess. Up until 87, at least, there were tons of fat-ass sailors.
Well, how many of those fat-ass sailors brought along dogs? Did the report tell you the percentage of that? They're little Jack Russell Terriers?
My notes also consist of several things that I was like, is this allowed on a submarine? And one of them is, can you smoke on a submarine? Because Gene Hackman's smoking a fucking cigar the whole time. And also, are you allowed to take your pet fish or a dog on a submarine? Here's my question, and I'm sure...
Okay, I have an answer for them all.
I'm sure without knowing that there's some sort of depressurization thing, but when they tell you like young babies have problems with their ears on airplanes,
right?
Wouldn't a tiny Jack Russell Terrier have issues being submerged several hundred feet under fucking water?
Okay, so I'll address them one by one. I believe that the only time the pressure affects you is when you either pressurize or depressurize too quick. The pressure within the sub will equal the pressure at sea level. So it's not too much. Are you allowed to have dogs on a submarine? I'm going to vote no. But because, Ramsey was such this, he was the last skipper to see combat. I don't know. Maybe they would let him do it. But your other question was about, can you have fish? That's Ryan Felipe, right?
Felipe.
The guy, Ryan Felipe from Cruel Intentions. He keeps covering up the fish tank. Like anytime they get like an alert or the speakers go off. So that makes me think he's not allowed to have his fish.
Right. That's some contraband he's brought on the ship.
A giant fish tank.
Yeah. Imagine being like, okay, we're going away. We're going to be gone for months. What thing am I going to smuggle on? A fucking beta fish?
Dude, but it wasn't even like a little glass globe with like one or two fish. This was like 20. He had the little plastic chest that went up and down with the bubbles, the lid. This was a full-blown aquarium.
It's a legit aquarium,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. It's interesting to watch movies now before like actors break it, because you mentioned Ryan Phillippe, but it also stars like shockingly Viggo Mortensen and James Gandolfini, as well as Steve Zahn, which we just covered in Safe Men.
There's our friend.
Not too long ago. There's our friend Steve Zahn. Yeah. But like Big D, what is it like for you to watch Navy movies being an Army veteran? Because there's a lot of them. We covered this in Top Gun, but I feel like Navy movies are not as superior as maybe Army depictions in later times. And what I mean by that is, go watch Band of Brothers, the 101 Airborne. Like when I learned that you were airborne, I was like, you were infinitely more cool in my book because I had just watched the entire series Band of Brothers.
Well, I wish, one of the things I wish I still had, I think it was 2004 or 5, I filmed a little, during the Army-Navy game, during commercial breaks, there's films that they show inside the stadium where the Navy makes fun of the Army, and then there's one where the Army makes fun of the Navy. I actually filmed one for the Army where I was like choking out this little Navy weasel because I was a big dude. I was ripped. So they had me like my sleeves rolled up, and I was like choking out this little sailor, this little tiny emaciated sailor that I wish I could find this thing, but it actually aired in the stadium during the game on the Jumbotron.
Yeah, I want to clear something up here for our listeners, because I've been teasing Big D over the last couple of weeks with rare pictures from his childhood. The picture that I want to show everyone, and I would blur out your face, is the ones of you right after basic training when you were enlisted. Carrie, you've got to see these. Imagine Ivan Drago, like that level of ripped.
Who's that?
Okay, you know the soccer player Ronaldo? with the abs. Who's someone that's really ripped, like
Arnold
really like
Schwarzenegger.
in great shape? Okay, he wasn't quite as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he was more shredded. He was like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator. He was ripped, and I mean hot. He was an attractive fucking. I was like, I get why he was like an alpha male. You were a total Chad. He looked phenomenal. And I'm not saying you look bad now, but what I'm saying is like when you were in the military, like I want to share those pictures with our listeners because I've shared like funny pictures that I've just pulled from Reddit and it's not you and that's the joke and whatever. And I hope people get it.
For the record, the jorts really is Raj though.
That is Roger, those jorts.
The jorts are me. Yeah, those are really me and cousin Brian and cousin Sean. But yeah, no, Big D, if you can send me some of your military photos, I think the audience needs those.
So watching this, you wouldn't, I was reading that the U.S. Navy found that the film was objectionable and inaccurate. I don't know anything about submarines or military or anything, so I can't corroborate this. But would you say that watching these kind of movies is hard for you to watch because you just find it's like me watching medical films or medical things on TV? I'm screaming at the TV or.
No, but again, this is a nuclear sub. Just because I was in the military doesn't know what this is like. This could be accurate. Right. We don't even know if you could bring a fucking dog. I was shocked to learn that you could smoke on a sub until 2011. I would have thought there's no way that would have happened. So I don't know why the Navy would get so upset or what part they're upset about besides the mutiny, because I don't think you want people around the world, our enemies, to know what is the exact procedure and protocol for operation in a nuclear drill within a submarine. I don't want people to know exactly whether this is accurate or not.
So what you're saying is Hackman and Denzel may not have been the most accurate portrayals of an XO or a commander of a nuclear arsenal.
No, you were talking about the cast, about, Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini, and Steve Zahn. Denzel and Gene Hackman, they come across as competent leaders. I believe them. There's a gravitas to them. The way that they play off of each other, it's fantastic. There's no question in me that these two guys are the characters they're playing. They're the two commanders on this sub. And Gene Hackman, there could not have been anybody better. He walks that line between just a fantastic asshole. He's sarcastic. You don't know when he's serious. You don't know when he's fucking with you. When Denzel says, I think that the crew is on edge. That they seem to be a little tense. He goes, "Oh, are they really?" He goes, "You really have your finger on the pulse of the crew." Denzel thinks he's serious. He says, "Thank you, sir." And he's like, "I'm not fucking thanking." He picks up the intercom and basically laces into the crew. Their interplay makes this movie work. And Gene Hackman, man, he is so underappreciated.
Yeah, so you think a competent commander brings on a Jack Russell Terrier, smokes on board, and makes really inappropriate high school jokes? Or jokes about high school girls? Like, when they're all sitting in their room and they're going around and Gene Hackman's kind of holding court and whatever, he makes this joke about horses. Because I think Denzel asks him about horses or asks Denzel's ever ridden horses. And he makes a joke. He's like, yeah, horses are this is Gene Hackman's character. The commander of our nuclear arsenal, the man with his pulse on the button, makes a joke and he says, yeah, horses are fascinating animals, dumb as fence posts, but very intuitive. In that way, they're not too different from high school girls. They may not have a brain in their head, but they do know all the boys want to fuck them. Now, Carrie Gross, as the resident female on the podcast, did you know that all the high school boys wanted to fuck you?
They didn't.
Oh, they did. They did.
As much as any high school boy wants to just fuck anything.
Yeah, but don't sell yourself short. They did. They did. But what I'll tell you, Roger, your question about the accuracy of how they portray the military in film, what blew me away, I've been in a room with a 4-star general. They will say, fuck this, I'm going to fuck that. That high school joke I could have heard about. Yes. But the one thing you do not say that will bring an entire room to a halt is to say goddamn. If you say goddamn, whoa, everybody, it'll screech to a halt.
So sexual harassment, perfectly fine.
Yes, but if you say GD, the room will screech to a halt. You don't take the Lord's name in vain, but you could talk about a schoolgirl being dumb and wanting to get banged by all the boys, but don't talk about the Lord.
And that's why I feel like, could I imagine myself being in the military in this time? It seems like it would be pretty radical, but I would hate to be in the Navy, especially stationed on a submarine. Submarines have to be like the last ship I would ever be involved on, because in addition to like people being allowed to smoke on them and carry pets and be completely unathletic, all it takes is a simple grease kitchen fire and you're fucked. Like, did you have flashbacks of Steven Seagal as the cook watching this whole scene and like the entire nuclear sub almost going down because someone put too much olive oil on a dish?
This is me trying to cook. While I was watching this, I was like, this is exactly why I don't do it. But what is an emergency CO2 button? Are they trying to tell me that CO2 has just been blowing into the kitchen the whole time while they're lighting fires, and that the dudes that are trained to work on the sub have no idea that button exists, and Denzel has to come running to hit the CO2 button?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit of a surprise too. That the XO, who just happened to be jogging by or doing his jumping jacks.
That's right. He's the only one doing fitness.
Oh, only one. Everybody else is just sitting there eating donuts. But right, the emergency CO2 button is like you see him hit the button and then it just douses the entire grill area with CO2, which cuts out the oxygen in the fire. But how did no one else in there fighting the fire realize that button was there?
You would think as a cook, that's the only thing you're trained on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
you would think that if they were putting military personnel on an enclosed ship carrying nuclear missiles, that you would have to know where all the emergency shut-off fucking buttons are.
Yes.
You would think that, but in a volunteer, incentive-based military, Big D can attest to this, you get some pretty bottom-of-the-barrel people in there that you have to lead.
Unfortunately, that is true. I remember starting off basic training with this kid who had been arrested multiple times for meth use. He lasted 2 days. I mean, he was essentially a vegetable, and the judge had given him an opportunity, either enlist. And I mean, 2 or 3 days, he was gone. But you have kids who this is their last opportunity to get out of their town. They haven't had a great upbringing or a great education. So there's a lot of great people, but there are some people that aren't, let's say, your first choice, the A1 top cut. I mean, later in the movie, they even joke about it. One of the guys who works with torpedoes says, "Why do we have to be further than 1,000 meters?" The other guy goes, "You idiot, because they won't arm." He goes, "How did you get on this boat?"
I'm gonna terrify you with a parallel right now. What you're saying about some of the, what do they say, that not the sharpest crayon in the box?
Right, there you go.
They can still graduate nursing school, and I work with some of them that in the same situation. Yes, I swear to God.
My bubble has been burst.
I was having a conversation with Jean the other day that we have some new staff members, and I'm in a position to like precept them, and I'm like, there's one that has 25 years of critical care experience, like more than half of my life. And I'm trying to explain a simple thing to her. And I'm like, she is just never going to get it. It's never, I told him, I'm like, there are people that no matter how you explain something or how many ways you show them or try to be patient and understanding with them, that they're just never going to get it. And they just can still cruise through life with people's lives in their hands. There's a joke in the medical field that we say, what do you call a medical student that got all D's in med school?
A nurse.
Doctor. They still
no.
Yeah, if you still graduate,
can still get fucking D's and be a doctor. It blows my mind. So I can understand that.
That doesn't make sense to me. Like, because you would think like someone who graduates law school with straight D's becomes an ambulance chaser. So like, what is the equivalent of a doctor who's the last in his class in medical school? Like, where does he go find work?
Scottsdale.
I've worked with some of them.
No,
I mean, really? So generally, what will happen is that you pass. You can pass school, and then you have to do like a residency.
Right. Yeah. And
then you'll just get eaten alive. You'll get eaten alive by the other doctors, the nurses.
The system will spit you out.
Not always, though. Few of them will get through the strainer, and more so the nurses. And so I'm saying I can understand that you're on a ship or a fucking emergency in a hospital, and you're like, oh, here comes Linda. Listen, Linda, you're never gonna get it.
Let me ask you this. Has there ever been a story in what you're saying where the last in class doctor in medical school goes on, he made straight D's all throughout medical, has gone on to great things? I can't imagine that translating to the medical field.
I don't give a fuck how charming you are or that you blah, blah, blah. You're nice. You got a nice cornbread recipe and you bring everybody treats every time you show up to work. I don't give a fuck. I'm not here to make friends. I want to know that everyone around me knows what the fuck they're doing in an event of emergency.
Listen, Rudy is a fucking cute story about a football player. I don't want Rudy the doctor doing a fucking bypass on me. Okay? I want the all-star, like, stud quarterback. Don't give me Rudy.
With the last confirmed order being to launch, Gene Hackman decides to proceed. However, Denzel refuses because he believes that the partial second message may be a retraction. Gene Hackman argues that the Alabama is not the only American submarine in the area, and if the order is not retracted, other submarines will launch their missiles as part of the fleet's standard redundancy doctrine. When Denzel refuses to consent, Gene Hackman tries to relieve him of duty and replace him with a different officer. Instead, Denzel orders the arrest of Gene Hackman for attempting to circumvent protocol. The crew's loyalty is divided between the both of them, but the chief of the boat sides with Denzel by the book and having Gene Hackman's character relieved of command and confined to his stateroom, putting Denzel in charge of command.
Okay, so again, I was never on a submarine. They're trying to be stealthy. They're trying not to be detected. There's a Russian sub nearby, but they're making more fucking noise than I can believe. Every alarm is like, there's sounds, there's sirens, there's radios, there's people screaming on the intercom. How is this stealthy? Doesn't the Russian just like, oh, we can hear him over there. Somebody's playing a boom box next to their fish tank. We can tell where the sub is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure another sub movie, Hunt for Red October, is all about them being able to hear the other subs, right?
Yeah, they heard him singing.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, in the event of emergency, and they are having to launch this missile, can the fucking punk in the back turn the goddamn boombox off? Like,
yes, right.
All right, it's time to fucking pull your pants up and let's go.
But there's a scene where Ramsey is like 4 feet away from Denzel, and he's on the intercom like, XO, should we launch? XO. And he's like, oh, puts it down. He says, hey, come here. Why are you on the intercom making more noise when the guy's 4 feet away?
Yeah, a fun drinking game while watching Crimson Tide is to take a shot every time someone says, this is the captain or this is the XO. I fucking grew so tired of that so quickly.
Or bubble. If they said zero bubble, if they said bubble, that's when you drink. Between bubble and this is the captain, you'd be fucking bombed within the first 20 minutes. But am I the only one? The big question here and the crux of the movie is the order to launch. I am sorry. I am 100%. After the torpedo attack, they're almost sunk. They're being attacked. I would 100% comply with the order to launch without even a question.
I don't know, because that thing was cut off, and you've lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis, which this is based on. We also, what was the other movie that we watched with the launch codes?
That was War Games.
War Games. I think it would take a lot for me to launch a nuclear attack.
Hold on. Imagine you're in War Games. You're in the bunker and you see Russian tanks driving through and shooting at your bunker. You would be like, man, we're under attack. This order is legit. And also, any incomplete order, any EAM that's incomplete doesn't exist.
So you mean to tell me that if, and again, this is an uneducated scenario here, that if we just have a land war going on Russian territory,
right?
Bear with me here.
Uh-huh.
And then we have, troops in a submarine and they're just shooting and firing. Like, if we see that, then we have the okay to then launch a nuclear missile at them?
No, the premise was that, was it Radensky?
Radchenko.
the premise was that Radchenko was threatening the U.S. If one Russian or one of his soldiers was killed, he would kill 900,000. He took over a Russian military base that had 25 intercontinental nuclear missiles with 10 warheads apiece. He said, if I feel threatened, I'm going to launch. So in this case, it seemed like a viable threat. You either hit that base or they're going to take out Japan, half of the East Coast. They're going to devastate the U.S. Like they said in the movie, this is about preserving democracy, not practicing it.
Well, I think that's the moral behind the story here is that, Ramsey wants to fire off this missile to protect the United States, to preemptively prevent Russian, missiles from being launched. But Hunter is trying to follow protocol because if the message was to hold off, then we are in fact initiating. And I love that he keeps calling it, because some people are calling it a nuclear war. He's like, no, it would be a nuclear holocaust. Right. And so I really, in my opinion, I mean, maybe once that they're being hit by torpedoes, that kind of changes the tone on the ship or the submarine. But I really commend him for standing up for what the protocols are to ensure safety and, preventing a nuclear holocaust. And I wouldn't say in my general life that I'm a rule follower, but when it comes to my job and in the hospital, it's rare that you get those situations. But I have definitely stood up and been like, I'm sorry, even though you are a doctor and, therefore you have ranking over me, I'm going to have to stop this situation because it's not going by protocol or someone's taking a shortcut or they're thinking, something is happening before we have results. It's like, you have to.
Yeah. But this was, and again, that's what I think the characters are supposed to invoke is this idea that Denzel's character went to Harvard and studied diplomacy. And even though he's never seen real action, he's coming at it from a situation where he not only wants to be a rule follower, but he wants to do what's in the best interest of our military and why it exists. Right. And we shouldn't preemptively use our greatest weapon without any type of control or restraint or acknowledgement of these type of protocols. And like, if this sounds exciting and intriguing, it's really not, because I was so bored throughout the entire movie. Like, this entire thing, you're supposed to be like on the edge of your seat and all this and reading into it. But I just couldn't get on board.
No, but the thing that they're trying to really instill here is that the military doesn't work without chain of command and without following orders. They have Gene Hackman, they have Ramsey there because he is that old, simple captain. He'll follow an order. You can't have people questioning every order. If you're out in a battlefield, nobody wants to be the one running into the wire. Nobody wants to be the first one through the breach trying to enter a building. But you have to put yourself behind what the overall mission is. And maybe it's because I was the military, but everything that they're seeing, everything that they're reading, except for this one partial EAM, says, yes, we're under attack, launch the missiles. This could cost millions of people's lives. This could cause the U.S. to be destroyed. You got to follow those orders. And if everybody along the chain of command just did what they thought or thought about it or just hesitated, the entire system collapses.
Which is why you need people at the top to really make the right decisions.
But in the end, it comes down even in this. It's the people on the ships.
Is it true that the president can launch a nuclear missile without any stops or checks?
Well, that kind of scares me now. Because,
now it scares
but
me.
Like,
now I wrote that
because
down.
that's like a remote control. Like, can't you hack that? Forget about like whether the president wants to just launch it. Isn't there some way that maybe you could hack that remote control to the sub?
No, I think the alien technology that we acquired during the Roswell crash of in the 1940s or is in the 50s. I don't know when it was. Anyway, they put protocols in that. It's like that little device that you get when you try to get into your office building, that RFID that changes its thing.
So the nuclear missiles are being protected by an RFID tag?
Yeah, exactly. The Alabama is attacked again by the Russian submarine, but the Alabama destroys it. But during the chaos, a counter mutiny ensues, and Gene Hackman's character, Ramsey, retakes the bridge, confining Denzel, the chief of the boat, and a few others to the officers' mess. However, Denzel escapes his arrest and gains the support of the weapons officer in the mission control room, further delaying the launch. Other crew members try to repair the radio while the battle for command continues. Eventually, Gene Hackman traps Denzel on the bridge, thus quelling all mutinous actions. But with the radio team reporting that they are near success, the two men agree to a compromise, and they will wait until the deadline for missile launch to see if radio can be repaired.
So we used to go out every 4th of July weekend. We go to a friend's house up in South Carolina on Lake Hartwell, and he has a boat, and we used to go out at nighttime on the boat, and he would be hauling ass. And when you're on the water at night and you can't see your surroundings, it's terrifying. I can only imagine being in a submarine. That you're down, you're hundreds of meters below the surface. You have nuclear weapons. You have people shooting at you. It's claustrophobic. When that leak finally occurs, or when they're sitting there and they're waiting in the silence for the torpedo to explode, it's terrifying.
It is.
I can't imagine the fear of just being on a ship or being on a submarine and just not knowing what's going to happen. It makes this is scarier than any horror movie I've seen recently.
Yeah, drowning at 1,850 feet has got to be one of the worst ways to die. But like, for as good as they do in terms of executing, or as good of a job that Tony Scott does in executing that claustrophobic tension, the underwater dogfight scenes where they're trying to make the sub torpedo attack as exciting as he did in Top Gun, it just doesn't work. How are you going to tell me that a nuclear class submarine is going to be able to maneuver and send out countermeasures, which is their answer for every non-torpedo blast? How are they going to make that as exciting as two F-14 Tomcats battling MiGs, across the Nevada sky?
What would happen if they weren't able to seal the bay? So water floods into the submarine. Yep. They start dropping pressure, sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Are the people on the submarine going to start dying because of lack of oxygen? Are they going to go unconscious from the pressurization? Are they going to drown? I mean, explain to me.
Okay, well, what's going to happen here is when they lost propulsion, right, and it gets below 1,800 meters, you would have the hull would get crushed like it was a can of beer. Okay.
Oh my God.
And this has happened before, just to let you know. Yeah. There's the USS Scorpion on May 22nd, 1968, with 99 crewmen on board. It was a nuclear sub, and it was lost. Mm-hmm. So I think they also lost the USS Thresher, was another sub. And they subsequently went back, and I think it was the same people who did the thing with James Cameron for Titanic. They went down and either pulled the nuclear warheads out or did something with it. But yeah, you just go down, it would implode like an empty can of beer, and these people would just go straight down.
Yeah, it's definitely feet, because 1,800 meters would be 6,069 feet. So it's
okay, that's a bit far. Okay, so
right.
Under 1,815 feet is when it would just get crushed. But yeah, imagine that. It would have flooded out. You would have sank. It would have crushed.
Yeah.
And you instantly would just pop.
Well, isn't it in Red October where the sub is, it can't move and all the sailors are like banging on the, that's going to be a terrible way to die.
Oh, that's the worst. One of the most terrifying scenes is when the sub is immobilized, and it's just slowly just sinking.
Oh,
and you start hearing the hull creaking. And
anytime
and you're just waiting.
So I have to ask then, because we watch this scene with fear and anticipation. Is they're waiting for the guy to seal the bay, and he's waiting for his friends, his brothers, to swim out of the water. I have to ask you guys.
Sorry.
How do you live with sealing the bay? I'm in there and I'm swimming towards the hole to get out, and the entire submarine is waiting for you to seal the bay, and I'm almost there. You seal me in?
Yes. Yeah, you know what's going to happen, Carrie? You're going to die anyway. You're dead anyway. Either I seal you in and you die, or I don't seal you in, you die, and everyone else dies.
It's not the guy's fault for sealing them in. It's the assholes who were he was calling down to them, let it go, come up. Let it go. Come up. At that point, the hatch it's done. like it's now a fight for your survival and your crew member's survival. Like, you're just being selfish in there trying to like, oh, I got it, I'm going to fix it. No, you drop your wrench, you swim to the hatch, you come up, you close the bay. That's their fault for dying.
Still, that person has to seal the hatch. And even though he knows that's what he's doing to save himself and save his other brothers, there's still that moment like that person is fucking dying on the other side of this hatch right now.
Yeah. It's like, Carrie, if you're driving a car and it goes out of control, you can either steer to the left and you hit 2 people, or you steer to the right and there's like 5 people and children.
Yeah.
Which way do you steer?
It's the what's the name of the test for this? There's a test for it.
The Turing test?
The Turing test. Thank you.
No, that's for robots.
No, what is
that's robots if they become sentient?
What is the hold on, let me Google that. It's the Trolley Dilemma.
Yes, you're right.
It's called the Trolley Dilemma. The Trolley Dilemma, where you're saying that if I'm guiding a trolley and I've got 5 people on the track versus 1 person on the track, and I have to make a decision on which way I go because the track splits, so I can kill 1 person or 5 people. What do you do? And the 1 person might be someone of your family.
Mm-hmm.
The decision you make tells you something about your personality. I would probably say my own family member because I don't care about these.
I would have fucking sealed you in, Roger, the first time he said,
I know
seal the hat.
I would have been like,
at that point,
I would have been like, Big D, I'm coming. I'm swimming. There's still time.
He's ankle deep, so it takes him 3 hours to fucking drown. Seal it.
I'd be pushing Roger down with a broom handle. Like, he can't make it. He's not
I'm here, Big D. I'm ready. Pull me up. No, it's too late.
It's too late.
You're such an asshole. You're such an asshole. Well, after several tense minutes, communications are restored, and they finally see the full message from the second transmission. It is a retraction ordering that the missile launch be aborted because Radchenko's rebellion has been quelled. After returning to base, Ramsey, Gene Hackman, and Denzel are put before a naval tribunal to answer for their actions. The tribunal concludes that both men were simultaneously right and wrong, so Denzel's actions were lawfully justified. Unofficially, though, the tribunal chastises both men for failing to resolve the issues between them. Thanks to Hackman's personal recommendation, the tribunal agrees to grant Denzel command of his own sub while allowing Hackman to save face via an early retirement. Both men then reconcile their differences and part ways. End movie.
So someone owes Denzel a big fucking apology.
You think?
This is like one of his first big vehicles, though, wasn't it? Like, this is...
No, she's talking about the character.
That's what I mean. Oh, you're saying the character.
That somebody needs the character. You better tell Hunter, oops,
no,
you were right.
Because that's the kind of the deflating part of this movie is like at the end, they get in front of, and they're like, yeah, you guys are both right. Like, what's the fucking message then? You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, I think Denzel, to your point, Carrie, he's in the right. He saved nuclear holocaust.
Nope. I'm just one of those people that I don't give a fuck. If I know I'm right, I'm right, and I will hold that grudge forever. They're like fucking shaking hands, and Denzel is so like honored that, you know, Gene Hackman is stepping down. No. Say you're fucking sorry, motherfucker. I was right.
Yeah, if the Navy needs to fucking come down on the hard on anybody, they got to come down on that fucking clown radio guy, Collagito from Bronx Tale. You know, I think it was, what was it? It was Petty Officer 3rd Class Volser. That motherfucker.
Somebody watches the credits.
That motherfucker can't fix a radio. He kept like just twisting knobs. At the beginning, he had on the soldering iron. You know, he had some sparks, but he did nothing. I could have been there just wiggling the knobs and dials. He was just hoping it would work. And essentially it does. Yeah, that's all he did. Yeah.
As that whole scene, you know, I mean, as soon as the conflict between Ramsey and Hunter is presented, we know how it's going to end. And when they're, you know, rushing to try to get the radio to start working before they launch in 30 seconds, we know what's going to happen. I didn't for a second think they were going to launch a nuclear missile. I knew that Denzel was going to come in, save the day, you know, escape from being held prisoner for mutiny. I just found it so predictable.
What, you didn't think they were going to sneak in nuclear war into the final 2 minutes of the movie?
You're right at the end. It's just
surprise.
It's just a mushroom cloud.
The end.
Wow. Talk about subverting my expectations, Ryan Johnson. Well, now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meters and give you our wipe scores. If you've never listened to the podcast, Zero Wipes is a perfect movie, completely clean. Just like you would imagine a Navy toilet would be, just clean every day because there's someone to do that. 5 Wipes is a terrible movie. It's something that you would expect the Marines latrine. Actually, I guess there is someone like, I shouldn't say anything bad about the military because I imagine there's someone in every class that has to clean the toilets, right? Like, are military toilets really clean, Big D?
Disgusting.
Are they disgusting? Are they really bad?
Yeah, because you would rotate who would clean the barracks. It would be different platoons. So that when it wasn't yours, it was bad. We had the mad shitter at one point. Somebody was doing shit prints all over the all over the walls.
All right, so the shit printer is a 5 wipe. It's the worst of the worst. So 0 Wipes good, 5 Wipes bad. We'll start with you, Carrie. How many wipes do you give Crimson Tide?
Jesus, I didn't even think about it. This whole time I'm watching this movie, I'm just trying to fucking focus about what's going on, what is actually plausible here happening. I will say it went by fast. That's something I can appreciate when we watch so many movies as we do, is that if a movie doesn't feel like it's dragging on forever. I feel, like Big D was saying that when they start the countdown of like the 60 minutes of, the missile launch, the movie then becomes in real time. And so along with the characters, we are experiencing the suspense. There was some suspense. I did feel, anxious when the submarine starts sinking. I didn't hate any of the characters. I mean, I hate the character of Ramsey. I thought Gene Hackman did a great job. Is this my type of movie? Clearly not. It's not my type of movie. Would I watch it again? No. But for, what it is, a military-style movie about nuclear war, a submarine movie, a Navy movie, I don't have anything to compare it to. So I'm going to have to say it's just an average movie for me, a 2.5 wipes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. This is a very average movie. It's well acted, technically, in terms of like, can the actors deliver their lines? But at the end, it still feels like you're just watching Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington read lines together. That being said, it's a kind of a boring movie. I felt the complete opposite as you, Carrie. I felt that the movie was way too long. I felt like it dragged on. I grew bored quickly. I tried to stop myself from looking at my phone, but there were different times where I was like, could that really happen? And then I would fall down in like a Reddit rabbit hole. I had to stop this movie and watch it over a couple days because it was so exhausting to get through. But it's not a terrible movie. It's just average. So I think 2.5 makes sense. So I agree with you. 2.5 wipes. Big D?
I completely disagree with both of you. I think it's it was totally entertaining. As far as naval suspense thriller films go, this is up there. The cinematography is great. Fantastic performances. I will agree that the third act is probably about 10 minutes too long. When they go the whole commando, they're going in and getting the arms, and they're going back and retaking the bridge. You could have cut that down a little bit, but the acting and the scenes are tense, top notch. I think the torpedo scene is great when they immobilize the Alabama and starts to sink. You could feel the tension. I think I want to give it a 1.25. I think I'm gonna like this much more than Hunt for Red October. It's more realistic. It's grounded. You should have left the viewing of this questioning, and like we did, what would you do? What would you have pushed the button? It takes a little bit of thought, and I think maybe Roger, that's why you didn't like it. But proof of why this is a 1.25 movie is it really solidifies that thought that little rat dogs and people who have little rat dogs can't be trusted. It's clear in this movie that's the point they're making. Ramsey brings on the rat dog. He pees. He defecates on the deck.
Those rat dogs you were in love with. Let me just peel back the onion here and showcase all our. When Big D was here in Scottsdale a week ago, you were so happy to have Albert and Pippa on your lap, sleeping with you in the extra bedroom. You were like, I love these dogs. They're great. I get the allure of them. I love them.
I never
yes,
said that. Never
that's
said
exactly what you said. You had the time of your life spending time with Albie and Pippa.
If you had a pet tarantula, I would have said the same thing. Okay. But the point is, you can't trust Ramsey because he would launch the missiles without a verifying command. And he also owns that tiny little dog. So 1.25.
I have to ask, what did you guys feel about the ongoing story of the two horses that was an analogy of Ramsey and Hunter arguing over what was the right decision? I mean, that was a big part of, wrapping up the plot was that they talk about these horses, and I'm just like, oh God.
It made me want to watch. It made me want to play Red Dead Redemption 2, which I have named my horse in Red Dead Albert.
I think in the end also they were both wrong. I don't think that the horses were from Portugal. I think they were from like Slovakia. So I think in the end they were both wrong.
Just like my ex. Well, if you add up our scores, 2.5, 2.5, and 1.25, that gives us a overall rating of 2.083 repeated, which Big D, where does that put Crimson Tide on the pantheon of Shat?
So that puts it now in the 44 spot. It is better than Pet Sematary, Home Alone, and Major League.
Oh,
it is worse
travesty.
than Blues Brothers, Beverly Hills Cop, and Tombstone. What? It's worse than those.
All right, so Blues Brothers is ranked way too high, and I blame the King Bee for that. And this movie is not better than those movies that you just mentioned. Major League? Are you kidding me? Major League is far superior to Crimson Tide.
So what do you think you gave Major League then, Raj?
I gave Major League like one wipe.
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5. I think you
How
guys
about Goonies?
You guys talked me down. Goonies is like a 3.5.
You said it was a 3. What about Under Siege?
Under Siege, it was kind of fun. I think I surprisingly gave it 2 wipes.
2.5.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm in the ballpark.
This movie's where it belongs.
That's terrible. It's terrible.
It's a good movie.
Well, now's the time where we give our shout outs and tell you which movie we're doing next. Do we have any shout outs, Big D?
Gene is the one who's got to teach us how to get to those.
Okay.
So we don't, unfortunately, and today, because we were recording back to back, we're kind of pressed for time. But Carrie, we do have a commission next week from Greg R., who has commissioned a film before. And he commissioned this with you in mind. So I'm going to let you read the overall movie description and then lead us into the outro.
You're only saying you're going to let me read it because there's all these words you're not going to be able to pronounce.
No, because
take a drink.
I know this will give you a little tingle in your girl parts.
Oh, wow.
All right, I'm going to fuck this up
Someone's
too.
commanding a nuclear submarine.
I'm going to flute the buoy.
All right. In the year 10,191, a spice called melange is the most valuable substance known in the universe, and its only source is the desert planet Arrakis. A royal decree awards Arrakis to Duke Leto Atreides and ousts his bitter enemies, the Oh, for fuck's sake. I feel like Big D.
Haven't you been wanting to do this movie for a long time?
Yeah, but I don't know how to say this shit. I just watched the movie. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
So just go to the end.
I can't.
Come on.
I just should say that it was a movie commissioned off of my choices, and I don't know. Play the fucking trailer. I'm done. I can't.
Just tell us the release date and everything else.
Yeah, just tell us that you couldn't say the words, but listen to the trailer.
Just read the rest. Come on, Carrie, just say based on...
I'm trying.
Okay.
Based on... Now I can't even say Frank's name. Somebody just feed this fucking thing. I'm done.
Go. Come on. Just go. Say release date. It was released on...
Released on December 14th, 1984. Directed by David Lynch. Budget $45 million. Box office at $30.9 million. Screenplay also written by David Lynch.
Yeah, it's considered one of the biggest box office bombs because the idea or the promise that this movie would be a huge blockbuster did not pan out. Like, it lost more than just $15 million on marketing. And it's being redone. Like, there's a lot of actors that are going to possibly make this the movie it should have been done. But the movie we are doing is what, Carrie?
No, she can't tell it. You listen to the outro.
Oh, okay. All right. Listen to the outro. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're everywhere on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just search for Shat the Movies. Our Facebook is Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website is shatthemovies.com, where you can vote on upcoming films and do commissions. There's a link there. You can also email us your suggestions at hosts@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere. Fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes. Please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That does help the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and True Detective. You can find all the past episodes and information on our website, shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Carrie Alabama Gross, I'm Roger Roeper. Be sure to join us next week for the following commissioned movie review. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, good night, and good luck.
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. The planet is Arrakis, also known as Dune.
You are about to enter a world where the unexpected,
many dangers exist on Arrakis.
the unknown,
An incredible secret has been kept on this planet.
and the unbelievable meet.
I see two great houses feuding.
Where kingdoms are built on earth that moves.
We have worm sign the likes of which even God has never seen.
And skies are filled with fire.
The prophecy which will cleanse the universe and bring us out of darkness.
Where a young warrior is called upon to free his people. A world that holds creation's greatest treasure.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
And greatest terrors. A world where the mighty.
This is genocide. The deliberate and systematic destruction of all life on Arrakis.
The mad.
I will kill him!
I will love you forever.
And the magical.
Father, the sleeper has awakened!
Will have their final battle.
Long live the fighters! Do not show the slightest pity or mercy! Emperor, we come for you!
Dune, a spectacular journey through the wonders of space and the mysteries of time. From the boundaries of the incredible to the borders of the impossible. Now, Frank Herbert's widely read, talked about, and cherished masterpiece comes to the screen. Dino De Laurentiis presents Dune, a world beyond your experience, beyond your imagination.